constitutes the emotional centers of your brain and is devoid with all logical computation. Welcome back, gentlemen. Today we have a fascinating video that explores the ancient wisdom of African sexual magic. Now, we have to, of course, as per usual, give our appreciation for famous cheesecake 60. I was just talking to my African father and I asked him why we feel so weak after we ejaculate as men. Don't we all, brother? Don't we all wonder? Aren't we all curious? I'm sure we'd be fascinated to get your father's interpretation on this. He doesn't know any English, so this is a translation of my language, Somali. So he said, back in the day when I lived in a village in Somali, when we weren't allowed to even talk to girls or see them that much at all. Start bringing them up young in relation to content today here. He said, the energy I had back in those days was truly incredible. I used to be so strong, ran, climbed trees, swimmed in the rivers, fought. He said he had a passion and imagination. And he said back then these men would go camel herding for months and come once to their wives every few months from work and have sex and make a baby. What you can see here is two very disparate forms of living life. I think it may be more accurate to describe it in a dualistic nature, in this yin, in this yang way in which we should live, the dichotomy of the physical realm that we all inhabit. In fact, you might interpret this the way the Taoists do in terms of the yin and the yang way of living life. And in fact, I have a reference point for that very yin and that very yang way of how the natural realm we inhabit functions. So you have the yang-based energy here, the white, the masculine, which is the creation of order in the world. And then you have the yin, you have the feminine, you have the mysterious, you have the chaos, you have the beauty. I like to say if the yang is the frame of the picture, the yang is the frame, the masculine, the order that holds it, the yin has to be the beauty. And there can be no life lived or enjoyed without the beauty inside the picture, but it cannot be contained and controlled if there is no order, if there is no frame, if there is no masculine essence to the world in which we live. So you have the seasons of work. You have where man sows the field, fishes in the river, and he pulls the cart and he herds the animals or the camels in this example here. This is your yang energy. This is your masculine. This is our order. The energy of creating order and structure in the world we live in today. Men feel a natural disposition to this kinds of energy. I like to say if you were born a man, then of course you will have a predisposition to want to fuel, funnel, and channel that energy out into the world. You might have heard this saying, men built the world that we live in today. And it's very easy for you to have a sexist reflex to this, especially if you have been belittled and berated and radicalized by the leftist ideology in the world today, especially if you're a woman watching this video. But regardless of how you feel towards this notion, you must know that this is true. It was a man who built the house that you live in, or the building that you're watching this video. It was a man who built the chair that you're sat in. It was a man who built the device that you're watching this video on. It is men who create order out of chaos. So at this time, going back to this gentleman's father's story here, it is paramount that a man conserves this vital energy in order to fuel the creation of order in the world. And this is significant work, by the way. And you know, the more and more I think about it, the rationality, the reason, the purpose behind the sexual dysfunction in the world today becomes readily apparent. I mean, really think about it. The average man in the world today is spending 9 hours from Monday, every single day, from Monday to Friday, just sat in a cubicle, sending emails and pushing bullshit pieces of paper around his desk. And when you compare this to the life that this young man's father was living, sowing the fields, herding the camels, the comparison in terms of physical exertion, I mean, there's a canyon between them. They couldn't be further apart. Now, our friend's father here goes on to conclude that only once the work is done do we return back home to our wives, make love, procreate, and have children. So we go back to the animals for months. He also said that your legs and knees go weak after you ejaculate. And he even said if you're not having sex to make a baby and you're just doing this for pleasure, then the woman becomes healthier from your semen more than you. So a reference again to the notion that this is a life force, this is an asset, this is a creative essence. It is dense in terms of its, microbiological value. And we started talking about if man does no drugs and stays sober and practices abstinence, that man will be great. Well, I'm sure I wouldn't find anybody else who would not concur with you there, my friend. And I said to him that drugs make men feminine, and he agreed. So let's unpack that for just a moment. I got into a little bit of bother the other day on Twitter because I tweeted the idea that relapsing and addiction in and of themselves are inherently feminine. What do I mean by that? I mean because it's the limbic system's reaction. It's the limbic system's responsibility to that kind of impulsive and irrational behavior that is sparse with logic. Your limbic system constitutes the emotional centers of your brain and is devoid with all logical computation. An addicted man, by definition, is a feminine man because he lacks the strength in his prefrontal cortex to have self-government and dominion over the limbic system, the feminine parts of the brain. Only when you strengthen this area, which is to say you have top-down control over the human organism, can you begin to come into alignment and congruence with this notion that you have masculine control over the animal. So how does one do this? I can hear many of you asking. You have to exercise control in spite of an anticipatory response to pleasure. Meditation. I will keep harping on about meditation until I'm blue in the face. But let me just tell you, I have rarely seen my clients have control over their impulses. It doesn't have to be pornography. It can be weed. It can be drugs. It can be pain medication. It can be Xanax, who have not in some way incorporated an activity and mindfulness exercise that strengthens the structures in the prefrontal cortex. If those structures are weak, you will fail every single time. And this is a tangible difference that happens inside you, inside the gray matter. Once you begin to do this, your brain is plastic. It will change in response to the stimuli. You need to sit yourself down like an animal, like you're training a dog. I mean, dogs are very impulsive at first, but once you, again, control them, discipline them, get them to feed back to the more logical parts of their mind instead of being run by their limbic system, they will obey, they will learn, and they will have self-dominion over themselves. Train the animal. So men, let's take back our power. I agree, because my dad, who didn't even speak English, never heard about this notion of nofap and SR, knows about the weakness that comes from ejaculation because he experienced it firsthand. It's very curious to me to note that this individual didn't even realize that this was a trend, that this was an ideology. He just took it as a matter of fact, a matter of life in his particular African community. And it has to have some kind of significance, because how can you as a man hold back and put at bay the natural sexual reflex that you have if you weren't noticing tangible differences in your indulgence over that reflex comparatively to its effect on your work and how you are able to create a quality life for you and your family? But what do you think, gentlemen? Theories or facts? Would love to get your opinion. If not, I'll speak to you again very, very soon. Take care.